Good morning. It's great to be here with you today and with those who are with us online today. Our worship today has called us to give our hearts to God. And that is what we're here to do. And I'm glad to be able to share in that with you this morning. I'm going to show you a picture here of a book called The Runaway Bunny, a classic from 1942. You may remember reading this book when you were a kid, or maybe this is one of those that you read to your children growing up. You may actually remember even more so, its more famous sequel to this book, Goodnight Moon, is the follow-up to The Runaway Bunny, one of those rare classics where the sequel might even be even better than the original, kind of like Rocky and Rocky II in my mind. This story is about, as you can guess, a little boy bunny that decides he's going to run away. So what does he do? First thing, he goes to his mother and he says, "I am running away." Do you remember what his mother says? "If you run away," said his mother, "I will run after you, for you are my little bunny." We read a lot of stories in our household. We read a lot of fun books, colorful books, pop-up books, silly books. How could I forget the time when we were reading a silly book called Mustache Baby? And my son, who was just learning to talk, pointed at the mustachioed baby in that book and said, "Dada," when he saw it. Not sure that I see it so much. Maybe just a little bit. We read a lot of silly books in our house, but The Runaway Bunny is more than just a silly book. If you run away, I will run after you, for you are my little bunny. There's something in that story that speaks to me about what it means to be made in the image and in the likeness of God. And that is, of course, what we've been talking about these past few weeks together on Sunday mornings. We've been talking about the way that God's identity can actually help us to discover and understand our own identity. And in a world where we are often wrestling with questions like, who am I really? And what am I here to do? Like, what do I live for in this world? Who God is can actually help us to discover our identity and our purpose in this world. God has given his very own name, his image, and his likeness to us that we might wear it as our own, and that matters for how we live in this world. So we've been talking about those three things: God's name, God's image, and God's likeness. The last couple of weeks we've been in the creation story, because that's where we find these words about God's image and likeness. Genesis chapter 1 and verse 26, "Then God said, 'Let us make humans in our image, according to our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all of the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground.' So God created humans, mankind, in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them." You know, these verses have been talked about in many different ways over the years. There's really actually three main ways that people have taken and understood what it means to be made in the image and in the likeness of God. We talked about one of those last week. Last week when we were together, we were talking about how these words really reveal to us a role that God has given to us, a purpose that we play in this world. The creator God of Genesis 1 is more than just a creator in this chapter. He is also the ruler over all that he has made. The creator is the king of this earth, this universe that exists because he made it. And when God rests on day 7 of creation, it's like a king who's reigning supreme over a kingdom that is all in order. And God said it was good. And last week we saw the way that in God's created designs for the world, God, in fact, said of human beings alone that we have a special designation in this creation, that we are crowned with God's glory and honor, as the Psalms say. God has made us in his image. Psalm 8 said, God made us a little lower than the angels. He crowned us with glory and with honor. And that matters for what we do in the world. You may have noticed when we read from Genesis 1, verse 26, that it says that God made us in his image and likeness so that we could do what? Rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air. The king who rules over the earth also has called us to share in what he's doing in the world. We don't rule over God, but we are like a representation of God's purposes in this world. God gives us this responsibility. God gives us this role here. This is one of the ways to think about being made in the image of God. And it's an important one because sometimes we are tempted to wonder as we go through life, like what difference your life really makes in this world, or like what does it all really stack up to, or do I really have a purpose for being here? But when we think about this, we remember that in God's eyes, you matter. You matter a great deal. You're God's crowning glory and honor in this world. And God has given the women and men of this world purpose, a role to play. So last week we looked at that first way of thinking about the image of God. This week I want us to turn our attention to another way of thinking about what it means to be made in the likeness and the image of God. It has more to say to us than just a role. These words actually also speak to a relationship. Image of God. Likeness of God. These are relationship words. You know, when we read this, we might actually come to that conclusion quite naturally, because in our human relationships, we are trained and conditioned to look for those resemblances, right, between parents and their children. Some of the things we say in our culture go like this. You know, so-and-so over there, they're just a chip off the old block, something people say. Or you might hear people say sometimes that such and such is the spitting image of their mom or of their dad. Boy, that's Stephen. He's his father's son. We knew it when he had that mustache when he was a baby. Resemblance with our parents, though, it goes beyond just like what we look like, though. You may remember the days when you had a landline phone at home and you didn't know who was going to answer the phone. Like now, you always know who's supposed to be answering when you call their number. You call the home phone. I mean, how many of you have had that moment where you had to stop and say, boy, you sound just like your dad. I'm sorry I started talking to you like you were your dad. Because sometimes that resemblance plays out in that way, too. She has her mother's laugh or her mother's personality or disposition and so forth. I know a family who they adopted a son from another country, and there were still so many ways that resemblance, that family resemblance, shined through in that son's life to be like his mom, to be like his dad. There's a whole lot of likeness there in our parent and child relationships. So when we read this passage, we might very naturally come to the conclusion that when it says we're made in God's image, we're made in God's likeness, this may have something to do with our relationship with God. And that would be right. If we need some proof of that, we only have to turn just like a couple of pages further, Genesis chapter 5. Genesis chapter 5 is one of those passages that it's like one of the genealogy type passages that you get in the Old Testament. The ones that if it's ever assigned as the scripture reading, like good luck, because there's going to be a lot of hard words to pronounce and names that you've never heard of before. This is one of those chapters. But this chapter actually gives us this interesting insight into what the words mean, image and likeness, what they mean in Genesis. So the passage begins by saying this is the written account of Adam's family line. We're about to get his genealogy here. But before we do that, we get this reminder of Genesis 1. When God created mankind, he made them in the likeness of God. He created them male and female and blessed them. These are all things Genesis 1 said. And he named them. He named them mankind when they were created. So we have a lot of our themes here in this verse. Name, image, likeness. what does that really mean, likeness of God? Well, look at how the same word is used next. In verse 3, when Adam had lived 130 years, he had a son in his own likeness, in his own image, and he named him Seth. Name, image, likeness, all right here. What do those words mean in this context? Does it mean that Seth looked exactly like his father Adam in appearance? We don't know any of that. We don't know anything about what he looked like or what he sounded like or if he had his father's laugh or if he had his father's demeanor or disposition, because that's not really what this is getting down to in the end. These words are not just about a literal resemblance that you can see with your eyes or that you can hear, but about this relationship that does not change. No matter what Seth looks like, and no matter what he does with his life, he's still Adam's son. Adam is his dad. Nothing's going to change that. I am running away, said that little bunny. If you run away, said his mother, I will run after you, for you are my little bunny. That's relationship there. And relationship like that is what it means to be made in the image and in the likeness of God. It means that you have a God in heaven who looks at you and says, you are my little child. And that matters so much. That matters so much for how we see ourselves and how we understand who we are in this world. It matters so much because very often in life we find ourselves looking for ways to belong somewhere else. It's kind of like the rest of this story, actually. On the first page, the little bunny declares his intentions to run away, and his mother says that she'll run after him if he does. If you remember this book, you may know that the whole rest of the book is this little bunny's imagination running wild about all the different places he could go, all the different lives he could live, other things he could be other than the little bunny of his mother. And so there's this back and forth that happens all throughout the book. The little bunny says to his mother, if you run after me, I'll become a fish in a trout stream, and I'll swim away from you. And the mother says, if you become a fish in a trout stream, I will become a fisherman, and I will fish for you. Well, if you become a fisherman, I'll become a rock on a mountain high above you. If you become a rock on a mountain high above me, I'll be a mountain climber, and I'll climb to where you are. All throughout the book, it's like this. The boy could be a bird, and his mother would be the tree that he comes home to. The boy could be a ship sailing on the water, and his mother would become the wind that blows him back home. The boy could be a trapeze swinger in the circus, and his mother would be up on the tightrope going after him. And isn't that just like us sometimes? We convince ourselves that there's some life for us apart from the relationship with God that has always existed. We have our own existence. It exists because we are God's creation, made in his image, made in his likeness. We are, as that psalm we read earlier says, knit together in our inmost being, created by God, fearfully and wonderfully, by a Lord who looks at us and says, you are my little child. The fact is, there's no getting around that. That's who you are. Oh Lord, you have searched me and known me, are the first words of this same psalm that said, you were knitted together by the Lord. You have searched me and known me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You're familiar with all of my ways. Before a word is even on my tongue, Lord, you know it completely. You hem me in behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me. The writer of this psalm stops to think about it and says, these sorts of thoughts are too wonderful for me. Look at verse 7. Where could I go from your spirit? Where could I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me, and the light will become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. The light will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you. You see, no matter where we go in life and what our life holds, there is a God who knows us and loves us because he made us in his very own image and likeness, which is to say that we are his little children. That's who you are. And there's no place that you could go or no thing that you could do that would make God stop pursuing you. There's no mountain, stream, or tightrope that you could walk. It's just not going to change the fact that you're his son. You can like it or not, live up to the name that he's given, or you can drag that name through the mud. To God, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. There is no darkness that is too dark for this God. The darkness is as light to you. This is the God who said of the darkness, let there be light. And there was light. And that is the God who said, let us make human beings in our image and according to our likeness. As if to say, you are my little child. You run, I'm coming too. This is where I issue a spoiler alert to the runaway bunny. If it's been on your reading list since 1942 and you haven't gotten around to it just yet, you can cover your ears because this is how it ends. When the boy realizes that there's no place he can go where he's not still his mother's son, when he realizes that his mother will come after him from the heavens to the depths of the sea if he runs, even that his mother would become what he has become in order to find him. When the little boy bunny realizes it, he says, well, shucks, I guess I better just stay here and be your little bunny. And so he did. Today, I really do think that the Lord wants us to come to the same kind of conclusion. There is nowhere you can go where you are not your Father's son or daughter. And Jesus proves what lengths God will go to run after you, even becoming what we are, becoming a human being like us. To find us where we are and show us the love of the Father for us. So why not just come home? Just be God's children, his image and his likeness. In God, we find a home, we find an everlasting embrace, like the best any parents in this world can have, and better still, in God, we find a relationship of unending love and patience and endurance and peace. In God, we finally come to see who we are through the eyes of someone who knows us best and loves us most. So why not just come home and be his little children? To be baptized in the name of Jesus is to embrace the love that God has always had for you. The love did not change. When we are baptized, we run toward it. We embrace it. Because God is so ready to embrace us too. In baptism, we're washed clean of our sins. And it gives God yet another opportunity to say to us, "You are my beloved child. With you I am very well pleased." Maybe that's what you need to do today. Any of us who have been baptized know that there are times even after that where we are like that little bunny in the story. And we run not toward but away from the God who loves us like our little children. We sometimes come up with interesting ways to define ourselves apart from the God who made us, people who bear his image and his likeness. And yet there is our loving Father, ready for us, ready to receive us. Why not just be here in his grace? Be his little children. If that's what you need to do today, if there's some way that you need to respond today, in heart or in action, let's come as we stand and sing.